Susanna was 42 years old and married to Oscar, who was 45. From a very young age, their lives were intertwined in a special way. They met at school and quickly became inseparable friends. Over time, this friendship evolved into a deep and sincere love. The two grew together, not only personally but also professionally. After graduating from university, they decided to open a company together. The company prospered, reflecting the success of their relationship. The combination of skills and mutual trust created an enviable dynamic, both in love and in business. Their marriage was considered perfect by everyone who knew them. Always together, sharing dreams and overcoming challenges, Susanna and Oscar were the couple that everyone admired. They had a beautiful home, 2 adorable children, and a comfortable life that they built with great effort and dedication. In the beginning, everything was a fairy tale. The nights were filled with laughter, deep conversations, and dreams for the future. Weekends were reserved for family adventures, walks in the park, and romantic dinners. Susanna felt she had found her soulmate, someone she could grow old happily with. Oscar was a loving and caring man. He would always surprise Susanna with little surprises, like leaving love notes on the breakfast table or bringing her flowers unexpectedly. Susanna, in turn, took care of Oscar with an equally devoted love. She would prepare his favorite meals and plan romantic getaways to keep the spark alive. In the professional world, they were an unbeatable duo. Oscar was the strategist, always thinking ahead and finding ways to expand the business. Susanna, with her detail-oriented nature, made sure everything ran smoothly. They complemented each other in a way that few couples could. As the years passed, they continued to grow together. They learned to face life's adversities, from financial problems to family challenges, always hand in hand. Their victories were celebrated with enthusiasm, and their defeats were seen as lessons to be learned together. To everyone around them, Susanna and Oscar had a perfect marriage. They were the epitome of true love, built on a solid foundation of trust, respect, and affection. However, as in any relationship, there were moments of tension and disagreements, but they always found a way to work things out and move forward stronger than before. The bond they shared seemed unbreakable. The friendship that turned into love became the foundation of their lives. Susanna firmly believed that nothing could shake this foundation. They were partners in every sense of the word, living a life that many only dreamed of having. In the last few months, Susanna began to notice small but significant changes in Oscar's behavior. He, who had always been an attentive and present husband, seemed to be increasingly distant. Before, when he came home from work, they would sit together to talk about their day, share stories and laugh at the little things in life. But now, these conversations were becoming rare. But before continuing this incredible story, check if you are already subscribed to the channel, because here I will bring you a series of videos like this one, which you will really enjoy. Continuing with our story. Oscar seemed to always be busy with something on his cell phone. Susanna would often find him looking at the screen, typing messages quickly, and laughing at something he saw. Initially, she didn't pay much attention to it. She thought it might be something work-related, perhaps a new project that required more time and attention. Oscar had always been dedicated to his work, and Susanna knew how much it meant to him. However, the frequency of these distractions began to increase. Family movie nights, once sacred, were replaced by Oscar sitting on the couch, absorbed in his phone. Dinner conversations, once full of laughter and lively discussions, became Susanna's monologues, with Oscar merely nodding his head while his eyes remained fixed on the screen. Susanna felt a growing sense of unease. She tried to initiate conversations about Oscar's work, hoping he would share what was going on. "How was your day today, honey?" she would ask, trying to sound casual. But his answers were always short and vague. "It was good, just a lot of work," he would reply, quickly returning to his phone. Susanna's concern gradually grew. She began to feel ignored and invisible. The nights became lonely, even with Oscar by her side. She found herself watching him, trying to understand what was going on. There was a growing frustration inside her, a feeling that something was wrong, but she didn't know exactly what. In an effort to save the relationship, Susanna tried to get more involved. She planned romantic dinners, suggested short trips so they could spend time together, and even tried to take a greater interest in Oscar's hobbies. But nothing seemed to work. Oscar remained distant, his attention always on his cell phone. Little by little, Susanna began to rationalize the situation. It must be work, she thought. He's under a lot of pressure and it's affecting our relationship. She wanted to believe that it was just a phase, that it would eventually pass and everything would go back to normal. She tried to convince herself that there was no reason to worry, that Oscar still loved her and that they were just going through a difficult time. However, the discomfort inside her wouldn't go away. The shared laughter was becoming distant memories, and the connection they had always had seemed to be fading. Susanna felt increasingly lonely, and the house, which had once been a home full of love and joy, now felt cold and empty. Despite all Susanna's attempts to save the relationship, the change in Oscar's behavior was evident. The distance between them grew wider every day, and Susanna couldn't help but wonder if there was something more going on, something she hadn't yet discovered. It was a quiet morning, like any other. Oscar had gotten out of bed and was taking a shower, while Susanna remained in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, mixing with the sound of running water coming from the bathroom. Susanna tried to ignore the worries that were building up in her mind, focusing on her morning routine. Suddenly, she heard a familiar sound, the sound of WhatsApp notifications coming from Oscar's computer, which was in the living room. Normally, Susanna wouldn't pay much attention to it, but something inside her compelled her to investigate. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was the growing feeling that something wasn't right. With her heart beating faster, Susanna walked slowly towards the computer. The notifications kept coming, one after the other, as if someone was anxiously waiting for a response. Sitting in the chair facing the screen, Susanna took a deep breath and decided to open WhatsApp web. As soon as the screen lit up, she saw a highlighted conversation. The profile picture showed the familiar face of her best friend, Tatiana. Initially, Susanna didn't think it was strange. After all, Tatiana and Oscar also worked together. However, as she scrolled through the conversation, her heart began to tighten. Tatiana's messages to Oscar weren't about work. They were photos, intimate photos, sent while Tatiana was in the shower. Susanna felt a wave of shock and disbelief. How could this be happening? She felt paralyzed, her eyes fixed on the screen, unable to believe what she was seeing. Each new image felt like a direct blow to her heart. What a shocking story, isn't it? But I noticed that you still haven't liked this video, which is very important for YouTube to continue sharing our content. It's free, thank you. Continuing, Susanna saw the photos and her hands began to shake as she tried to process the double betrayal, not only from her husband, but also from her best friend. How could they hide something so terrible? The trust she had in both of them was destroyed in that moment. As the water from the shower continued to fall, Susanna felt a mixture of anger, pain, and despair. Her stomach was churning and her heart was beating so hard it felt like it was about to burst out of her chest. She wanted to confront Oscar right then and there, to demand an explanation, but fear and confusion prevented her from doing so. Quickly closing WhatsApp, she tried to erase any trace of her investigation, but the image of the photos remained etched in her mind. Every detail, every message, every photo, it was all there, in her memory, like a nightmare she couldn't escape. When Oscar came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel and with a smile on his face, Susanna felt a new wave of pain. How could he act as if nothing was wrong? How could he look at her and smile after all of this? The good morning he had said sounded hollow, echoing in Susanna's troubled mind. She tried to respond normally, but her words came out weak and lifeless. Oscar kissed her on the cheek, unaware of the storm that was brewing inside her. Susanna struggled to maintain her composure, feigning a normalcy that she was far from feeling. The day passed in a whirlwind of emotions as she tried to process the devastating reality she had discovered. That night, as Oscar slept beside her, Susanna lay awake, unable to close her eyes. She knew she had to face the truth, but she didn't know how. Images of Oscar and Tatiana continued to torture her, and the pain of betrayal seemed unbearable. It was then, in the silence of the night, that a new determination began to emerge within her. She could not simply accept what had happened. Something had to be done. With her heart broken and her mind full of dark thoughts, Susanna began to devise a plan. She would make Oscar feel the same pain that she was feeling. And so, the seed of revenge began to germinate in her heart. Susanna decided that the best way to make Oscar feel her pain would be to give him a taste of his own medicine. If he could cheat on her, she could also find someone new. With her heart racing and a mix of excitement and nervousness, Susanna downloaded the dating app Tinder. She had never used a dating app before, but she was determined to distract herself and, who knows, meet someone interesting. The first time she opened Tinder, Susanna felt a wave of nervousness. She carefully created her profile, choosing photos that showed her best side and writing a brief description about herself. "Looking for new experiences and interesting people," she wrote, trying to keep her tone casual. As she began swiping right and left on men's photos, Susanna realized she was having fun. There was something exciting about meeting new people, even if it was only virtual. She started chatting with a few men who seemed friendly, but none of them really caught her attention. Until she met Lucas. Lucas was a charming and charismatic 35-year-old man with a charming smile and a mane of hair that gave him an alluring air. From the first message, Susanna felt an immediate connection. They talked about everything: their lives, their interests, their dreams. Lucas was fun, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her. For a week, conversations with Lucas became the highlight of Susanna's day. While she tried to maintain normalcy at home, pretending everything was fine, her conversations with Lucas were an escape from reality. They would text for hours, laugh together, and even share personal stories. Finally, Susanna gathered the courage to suggest a meeting. Her heart was pounding as she typed the message, but Lucas responded enthusiastically. They decided to meet at a bar, a place Susanna knew Oscar frequented. She wanted to make sure Oscar saw what she was doing. She wanted him to feel the same pain she felt when she discovered his betrayal. On the day of the meeting, Susanna got ready carefully. She chose a dress that made her feel confident and powerful, put on perfume, and looked at herself in the mirror, ready to face whatever came her way. When she arrived at the bar and saw Lucas waiting for her, she felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. Lucas greeted her with a warm smile and a hug. They sat down at a table and began to talk. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and soon they were laughing and exchanging meaningful glances. Susanna felt alive again, as if she were recovering a piece of herself that she had lost. Then, in the middle of their conversation, Oscar didn't come any closer. He just stood there, staring, before turning and leaving the bar. Susanna said a quick goodbye to Lucas and followed Oscar, determined to confront him. When she finally caught up with him on the sidewalk, he turned around, his eyes full of pain and disbelief. "How could you do this?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Susanna felt a lump in her throat, but she stood her ground. "I saw the pictures, Oscar," she said, her voice shaking. "I saw the pictures Tatiana sent you last week. How could you do this to me, to my best friend?" Oscar lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. "I was selfish and stupid, Susanna. I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with regret. Despite Oscar's words of apology, after the confrontation at the bar, Susanna returned home with a heavy heart. The pain of Oscar's betrayal was overwhelming, but she knew she had to make a difficult decision. The next morning, she got up early and made a strong coffee. Sitting at the kitchen table, she waited for Oscar to wake up. When he finally appeared, looking exhausted and regretful, Susanna felt a mix of sadness and determination. "Oscar, we need to talk," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He sat across from her, his eyes full of remorse. "I've thought a lot about what happened, and I realized that I need space. I need time to think about us, about our marriage, and about what I want for my future." Oscar looked at her, the pain evident in his eyes. "I understand, Susanna," he said, his voice low. "I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm sorry for that. If you need space, I'll respect that." Susanna felt a stab of pain in her chest, but she knew she was making the right decision. "I want you to leave the house for a while," she said, the words coming out thickly. "I need time to reflect, to sort out my feelings and decide what to do next." Oscar felt defeated. "Okay, Susanna. I'll find a place to stay and give you the space you need." He stood up and began to gather some of his things, while Susanna watched in silence, fighting back tears. As Oscar packed his bags, Susanna reflected on the years they had spent together. They had so many memories, so many shared achievements, but now it all seemed to be falling apart. The pain of betrayal was deep, but Susanna knew she had to be strong. She needed this time alone to find herself again. When Oscar finally walked out the door, Susanna felt a mixture of relief and sadness. The house seemed strangely quiet without him, but she knew that this temporary separation was necessary. In the days that followed, Susanna immersed herself in her own reflections. She spent hours walking through the park, trying to find answers to the questions that tormented her. On one of these walks, she met an old friend, Carla, who noticed her sadness. "Susanna, are you okay?" Carla asked, her voice full of concern. Susanna, unable to hold back her tears, broke down and told her everything. Carla hugged her and offered support, reminding her that she was not alone. Months passed after Susanna and Oscar's temporary separation. During this time, Susanna immersed herself in a deep process of self-reflection and therapy. Each therapy session was like a small step towards understanding herself and the complex web of emotions that surrounded her marriage. In the first sessions, Susanna felt lost. Memories of the past, of happy times with Oscar, mixed with the pain of betrayal. Her therapist, a kind and experienced woman named Clara, helped her navigate these feelings. "It's normal to feel this confusion, Susanna," Clara said, "but we need to focus on how you feel now and what you want for your future." As Susanna opened up about her frustrations, fears, and hopes, she began to realize something crucial. Despite the love she still felt for Oscar, the trust that had once been the foundation of their relationship was irreparably broken. Every text message, every furtive encounter, had created a barrier that, despite their best efforts, could not be overcome. In parallel, Oscar was also seeking therapy. He recognized his mistakes and was determined to become a better person, but he was also beginning to accept that sometimes love is not enough to save a relationship. In one of their joint sessions, they shared their perspectives honestly and openly. "Oscar, I loved you deeply," Susanna said, tears in her eyes, "but I can no longer see a future for us. The pain of betrayal is something I can't just forget." Oscar held her hand, his own eyes welling up. "I understand, Susanna. I am so sorry for what I did, and if I could go back, I would do everything differently. But I also realize that perhaps our journey together has come to an end." These words were both a relief and a sadness. It was as if a weight had been lifted, but the loss was still palpable. They talked at length about the future, about how they wanted to move forward in a respectful and amicable way. They decided to divorce. The process was painful, but they were both determined to do everything in a civilized manner. The lawyers handled the legal aspects, while Susanna and Oscar discussed the division of assets and childcare, although Susanna and Oscar's two children, initially shaken by the divorce, began to adapt to the new family dynamic, always seeking the best for everyone involved. When the day of the divorce arrived, Susanna felt a mixture of nervousness and relief. She dressed herself carefully, wanting to feel strong and dignified at this decisive moment. In court, when she signed the papers, she felt a wave of emotions. Sadness at the end of an era, but also hope for a new beginning. After the hearing, Susanna and Oscar went for coffee together, a symbolic gesture of respect and friendship. "I hope you find happiness, Susanna," Oscar said sincerely. "And I wish the same for you, Oscar," she replied with a sad smile. With the divorce finalized, Susanna began to rebuild her life. She began to focus on her hobbies and interests again, rediscovering her passion for painting and writing. She also began to spend more time with friends, reconnecting with old friends and making new connections. One day, while walking in the park, Susanna ran into Carla again. "How are you, Susanna?" Carla asked, full of interest. "I'm fine, Carla," Susanna replied, feeling truly happy for the first time in a long time. "I'm rediscovering who I am and what I want from life." Over time, Susanna realized that the pain of betrayal and divorce had been transformed into strength and resilience. She began to see life from a new perspective, appreciating every little moment of joy and peace. She knew that the future was still full of uncertainties, but she was ready to face them with her head held high and an open heart. This decision to divorce, although painful, had allowed Susanna to find herself again. She was ready to embrace the future, with all its possibilities and challenges, and knew that, in the end, she was on the right path to happiness and personal fulfillment. Thank you for watching this video so far. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give it a like to continue receiving future content.